I got one simple question for you. Do you like Hearthstone right now? Because if the answer is no, you might need to talk to this little plushy boy right here, because this guy's making me enjoy Hearthstone again, and I'm not even kidding. Before we get into today's topic, I just want to give a huge shout out to Blizzard for this. It's perfect. I actually ended up winning a tournament today on my stream. I did a little bit of an earlier stream because I had a French tournament that I was involved with, and I literally pet the king plush every single time before my games. And we won. He's my good luck charm now. I just don't know how else to put it, but I had to share this with you guys because he's absolutely adorable and is really one of the only reasons that I'm enjoying Hearthstone right now, because today's video is talking about the meta. Yeah, I know, boo. But trust me, there's a big point that I really want to highlight in this particular video. So up ahead, there's going to be a clip from my stream where we spent about 30 minutes talking about the meta in particular, but there's one focus that I want to focus on for this particular video, and that is the win conditions within Hearthstone. We have a really big problem right now to where win conditions are absolutely carrying the deck completely and thoroughly. Now, yes, win conditions should be the reason why you win, but it feels like in Hearthstone, if you play your win condition before anybody, before your opponent, then you just automatically win. There really is not a lot of clapback. There's not a lot of comeback ability. There's not a lot of things that you can do once your opponent plays Odin against you before you play your Odin in these kind of situations. And in the video coming up ahead, we decided to highlight the cards that are ending the game right now and how, like, the design philosophy has kind of put us in this situation to where we are at mercy of these particular cards that we went over on the stream, to where I want to highlight one particular issue with the Hearthstone balance philosophy. We simply had way too many balance patches that didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. And you want to know why I could say they didn't do anything? It's because we have the same problem that is essentially circling back to where, with the balance changes that we've made, we're essentially playing Hearthstone musical chairs, to where one deck is a problem, then we nerf it, we go to the next deck, like we're essentially playing whack-a-mole. And this is exactly what the Hearthstone designers didn't want to do at the very beginning of Hearthstone's history, to where Ben Brode, you know, he said that they didn't want to make a bunch of changes, they didn't want to make changes frequently, and they didn't want a bunch of hand disruption and all of these, you know, these tropes that we're seeing in Hearthstone right now. I'm not here to say that one philosophy is correct or the other one is, but I am here to say that the design philosophy definitely needs to change within Hearthstone, because we need to nerf harder and we need to wait longer before we make any changes, because pretty much right now what we're dealing with is the fallout of nerfing way too soon and way too early. But there were a lot of conversations that we had over at twitch.tv/ClarkHellScream. And if you want to be part of those conversations in the future, then definitely go out and check out the Twitch stream, because I want to do more content like this, to where I'm giving my opinion, but I'm also having a discussion with chat. And every now and again, you guys might have like a point that'll bring me back into focus on what the issue is, because there are times that I make these videos and I go on rants and I forget like complete points that I wanted to make, which is why I'm recording this right here. Because one thing that I didn't really talk about is why we are highlighting the particular cards. We are highlighting the cards that are the primary win conditions, and these are, like, you know, the two most important cards in your deck, to where it feels like cards are just 28 cards that are supporting your win condition, instead of, like, you know, a deck of 30 cards that has multiple different ways of winning. Unfortunately, in this particular expansion, because we have a 4-set rotation, this is where power and differences really do matter, because when you have one card that is just strictly better than the other, when you only have 4 sets in the rotation, it's really hard in order to abandon that really good archetype. And like one great example of this is actually Reno Warrior. Why would you ever play a deck like Mech Warrior when Reno Warrior is just superior in every single way? Like, it has better lethal tools, it has better burst options, it has better control tools. When you're playing Mech Warrior, it's not doing anything. It's just dying. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, because it really feels like if your deck does not have any of the cards that we are discussing in this video, it doesn't feel like it's meta relevant, and I just do not like that about this particular expansion. The player agency is down, the decisions that matter are not happening that frequently, and it really just feels like, you know, we kind of set ourselves up for this, because using Druid as an example, we literally nerfed every single good deck that could potentially be the answer to Druid. Aggro Paladin, Zarimi Priest, even, like, you know, some Shaman decks to an extent I feel like should be good against this Druid deck, but we nerfed everything around it, and now we are stuck until new cards come out in this really unfortunate meta that I hate to say the players kind of caused on themselves a little bit, not blaming the player base, but, you know, us constantly asking for balance changes, I really do believe, you know, gave Blizzard this idea, okay, what happens if we nerf this many times, and let's see what actually, you know, if it actually impacts the meta or not. And I think Blizzard really did learn a very valuable lesson that we need to nerf less, but we need to nerf harder. But let me know what you guys think about this conversation down in the comments, because I would love to make more videos like this. But thank you so much for making it to the end of this video intro, and now please stay for the sponsor, Into the AM. This video is brought to you by the manliest clothes you can find online. Into the AM. What does the AM stand for? It means Into the Apparel for Men. That's right, the M stands for man. Because, oh man, will you feel like a king with their new product line that just released for the summer. And right now, Into the AM is doing a 4th of July summer sale on these new cool summer designs. You can get up to 30% off. But to make the deal sweeter, if you use coupon code ClarkHS10, you can save an additional 10% off your next purchase while supporting the manliest Hearthstone content creator on YouTube. So help support the channel by using coupon code ClarkHS10 at checkout. And if we sell enough shirts, there's a possibility that Into the AM will work with us to get this epic manly painting onto one of their future products. So don't forget to use coupon code ClarkHS10 at checkout to save 10% off your next order on the manliest shirts you'll ever get your hands on. And now, let's get back to the video. Don't forget the backs of these shirts are actually really cool. Because we are with my chat right now, and we are talking about the Hearthstone meta. That's right, a hot topic, and I believe I have an answer to why things absolutely suck. Things kind of suck right now when you're playing Hearthstone. The reason for that is because decisions aren't mattering as much as they used to. It feels like, you know, the only important decision is what deck you are playing. And as of right now, Druid is, well, completely overthrowing everything. And as you can tell by people in chat, some people may be happy about Druid, some people may hate Druid, some people may love it. But regardless, we are here to talk about the most problematic thing in Hearthstone right now, and that is just the lack of options. I have an entire list of cards that we're going to be going through, which I believe are the most important cards in the game. So what is the actual problem that is plaguing Hearthstone right now, at least in my personal opinion? The biggest problem in Hearthstone is the fact that we are playing a deck of 28 cards that are supporting essentially 1 or 2 cards that completely carry an entire archetype. And it's one thing to talk about a card that enables a particular archetype, such as like Alonius, for example. Alonius gives us a reason to want to play spell damage in Druid. And before, Alonius was really a card that didn't see a lot of play because it was really hard to support an archetype like this. And I don't mind it when Hearthstone, you know, adds like a card like this with an idea that they're going to support throughout the entire year. But unfortunately, when it comes to the situation we're in right now, where we are in a 4-set meta, we only have so many options to play with. And this is where we're going to talk about how many nerfs actually happened in Hearthstone recently. To kind of give you guys an idea of why I'm even making this video is because a lot of conversation on Twitter is surrounding about how did we nerf 500 cards during Whizbang and the game is more broken than ever. I know we didn't nerf 500 cards, but it sure felt like we nerfed everything that moved. And according to Jay Alexander, I have not double checked this number, but I'm just gonna roll with it. He said that we nerfed 35 cards. That is a lot of cards to get nerfed, and unfortunately, the problem that we have right now is that cards like Umpire's Grasp, for example, were nerfed, but because we nerfed so many cards, it really doesn't feel like this card actually had any meaningful changes. It does slow down the deck a little bit, but the point that I'm trying to make is that the feeling of decks really have not changed all too much. We have nerfed everything to the point where it feels like we have done a Hearthstone musical chairs to where, you know, we nerfed something, we made it a little bit worse, but now it's just back on top because we've nerfed everything else. It just feels like we just keep nerfing everything to the point where the same problems become a problem yet again. So now we're going to talk about the specific cards that I am referencing, because these are really the most important cards in Standard right now, at least when you're talking about these archetypes. So first and foremost, Hell Yeah. Obviously, this is one of the most important win conditions in DK right now, but the entire deck is centered around controlling and then just letting Hell Yeah essentially willow down your opponent. The longer the game goes on, the more likely this card is to win a game. Another Death Knight card that's a great example of this, that's not really that important on the ladder, is Amateur Puppeteer. This is a card where if this did not exist, Undead synergies do not exist within Hearthstone. And you know what? This is a great example of a win condition that I believe needs to be printed more often. This is one card that doesn't just automatically win the game. You have to build it up. You need to specifically put undeads in your deck. And this is a great example of a card that I want to see more Prince-like, because it does give us an archetype, but it's not something like Hell Yeah, where like for the rest of the game, oh man, these plagues are just going to, you know, completely destroy and whittle down your experience with this game. She's going to get nerfs, so the musical chairs will keep going with the nerfs. Well, we'll talk about that here in a second once we get through a lot of these cards. But like another great example of this is the Climactic Necrotic Explosion, to where I love cards like this. Like, this is a great way of building your win conditions that center around one particular mechanic, which in this case would be spending corpses. I want more cards like this, but unfortunately in the metagame right now, Climactic does find its way on the top of the ladder in a little bit of cases, but overall, this card is really not all too powerful when you compare it to like other things that have been powerful in this expansion, such as like hand buff DK, as well as the Shopper Demon Hunter. So this is where we're going to start looking at some other classes, because outside of like Rezka, that's like all there is in like Death Knight. But in Demon Hunter, for example, Umpire's Grasp, Sock Puppet, Sharpshooter, these Naga cards that just completely carry everything. If this sticks on the field, it just automatically wins the game. If you have Sharpshooter combos, like it's the most, you know, expected combo depending on how many 1-drops your opponent has. And this is also getting buffed in the next expansion, so Demon Hunter is going to look really stupid in my opinion going into the first day of the next expansion, unless we have a really good control deck that can keep this on edge. But then when we go back to the other demon cards, we're kind of back to the same situation, to where we nerfed a whole bunch of stuff, and now we're back complaining about Demon Hunter because these are the only options we have for the class. Unfortunately, big demons don't really see play because it's all about Shopper being able to cheat out a bunch of stuff, and mana cheat really does become a problem in a lot of different classes. So now if we look at Druid, for example, it's all about mana cheat and mana manipulation with cards like Doomkin, and this is even more of a problem recently because Trog is now one of the most important cards. Like, you're kind of seeing the trend that I'm focusing on with these particular cards, because these are the cards that completely carry the deck in every single way. But in the previous instance where we had a 4-set meta, it was a Voyage to the Sunken City, and we had an opposite problem, to where win conditions were not that common. But now this year, in the first set of this expansion, we have way too many problems. Trog just shouldn't go face, easy fix. Well, then the card is useless, and then what's the point of it being a finale if it can't go face? The problem with Trog Gem Tosser is not the fact of it, it's not its ability, it's the fact that you have way too many mana crystals way too soon, not to mention because of Doomkin literally stealing them from you, you're at a mana deficit and you're just sitting there with literally no options because your potential of playing more cards goes down because of cards like Doomkin. And Owl is honestly another great example of this. I mean, this is, you know, a win condition that you want to support if you wanted like a Mali Druid to be popular, but a lot of people are complaining about, you know, Owl and Swipe being a little bit too good, and Swipe being literally 3 mana is a really big deal right now. If this were to be a 4 mana card, it actually hits the Druid class insanely hard. But another thing that's plaguing Druid is ENR. There's so much there's so much mana steal, there's so much mana cheat, life steal, there's so much bullshit like scams that are possible with like Reno Druid and all of that, to where I have actually deemed on my list lifesteal an actual win condition, because sometimes it doesn't even matter what you do, you just need to destroy your opponent's ways of winning. But the point that I'm trying to make is that sometimes in this particular meta in Hearthstone, it's about denying your opponent more so than it is about building up your own win conditions. But these win conditions are absolutely key in order to have a chance of winning these games nowadays, because it's like, without these big cards, without these big swings, it really doesn't feel like these decks really have a lot right now. And case in point with Hunter, its main win condition is still to an extent RC Rampage plus Saddle Up. There's really not a lot of other Hunter win conditions right now outside of maybe King Plush if you're playing a big beast deck, but those decks really don't see a lot of play. And the only other like Hunter deck that saw a lot of play outside of Token Hunter was Highlander Hunter, and that's just essentially a tempo hunter with extra steps. So it's just really sad how like these win conditions are essentially pigeonholing these classes into, you have to play us, otherwise your deck is not going to be good right now. Yeah, Reno Hunter is definitely something we are bringing up. So is ENR single? Asking for myself, dude. I hope ENR is single because she is mommy, and I need a mommy in my life. And speaking of mommies, the mommy of Mage, like Sif Mage. This is still one of the primary win conditions, but no one wants to play it. No one is talking about it because no one wants to play this deck right now. It's boring, and there's just not a lot of options in this particular meta to where if you don't want to play keyboard and if you don't want to play spell mage, then there's not a lot of options for you to play mage right now. And kind of like what I was saying earlier with all the nerfs, if you've had a favorite deck in this expansion, it got nerfed and it probably was made weaker, and that is just less incentive to want to play Hearthstone. All of these changes that were made throughout this expansion really just made me want to play the game less because we were building up an expectation of something changing and then things didn't change. And you know, a great example of this, as we are going through the classes in order, Paladin. I cannot believe this is just not a 2/2 weapon. This should just be a 4-mana 2/2 weapon, and one card to look at in comparison to this. But I mean, compare Virtue to a card like Brass Knuckles and it is just laughable. Like, for 1 more mana, we are buffing every single card in hand. That is just absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. So it's just like the only way that I feel like we can really nerf these kind of decks is, or nerfing particularly hand buff Paladin, is just to make this into a 2/2 weapon. I still don't get why this has lifesteal, but hand buff Paladin has been plaguing this expansion the entire time, and I definitely know a lot of people in my chat in particular are not happy about this. And also, think about it this way, all the lifesteal cards that see play in hand buff Paladin, again supporting lifesteal as a very important win condition more than playing for tempo, more than playing for the board and playing for removal. You just need to just outlast your opponent by having big minions with lifesteal, because if it sticks, you just can't die. And I think that is a very problematic way of setting up a win condition, because we have way too many win conditions that essentially bully your opponent and put them in the dirt and then spit on them as they're in the dirt, and no one wants to deal with that, in my opinion. So another great example of a great card like this is actually Crusader's Aura. Like, even though aggro Paladin is very simple, this is still just a very frustrating strategy, when the best way of explaining this card and why I hate it is that you are sometimes tripling or doubling the attack of your minions. That's just busted. A 1/1 having 3 attack or a 2 attack minion going to 4 attack, you are doubling and tripling those numbers. And those are the cards that you are mostly buffing with this. So a board full of 1/1s is now going to be a board full of 3 attack minions. It's just frustrating. I hate this card. It may not be the best thing on Paladin right now, but it's a great way of explaining about how these win conditions, how these particular cards are more important than literally everything right now. And I want things to feel a little bit more fair, to where we can fight for the board instead of just everything being like, you know, board clear, remove everything, otherwise you are just gonna die. Like, I want a minion to stick for a turn or two and threaten a little bit, maybe get some face damage in. I really miss it when death rattles used to stick around, and unfortunately with cards like Reno, that's still kind of a problem. And in fairness to Blizzard, they really tried. They really tried to bring back board-based gaming, but then they added Time Warp onto an aggro deck. How do you not expect players to, first of all, not like a card like this, because it's going to be awful to go up against, but then you even double down on the sentiment by being like, all right, we're going to change this card. We are now going to make it to 8 minions instead of 5. Instead of aggro decks playing this, only mid-range decks can play this, and that's a little bit of a fair assessment. The deck is a little bit slower. It takes more time to build this up, but just Time Warp. Why are we adding another Time Warp into the game? I don't understand the point behind it. It's just even more frustrating when you also think about funnel cakes, Mana Cheat, all this stuff that's available in Priest right now, and it's just, oh my lord, don't even talk about Funnel Cake and Druid right now. Funnel Cake is not even seen playing Druid. That's how busted Druid is right now. But the point that I'm trying to make is that mana cheating, Zarimi with dragons, lifesteal, and Highlander is how Priest has been winning recently, and it is just not a fun experience for me. It's not a fun experience for a lot of people. And now, talking about mana cheat, we have to get into Rogue. Oh boy. Chat, give me your opinion on Rogue. I know a lot of you here do not like Rogue, and I need your guys' opinions on this because, oh my god. Oh, please go over the location. I mean, the location is another great example, but we are mostly focusing on win conditions. Like, the location for Priest that he's talking about is the Puppet Theater, and this is definitely the definition of an anti-fun card. but this is not necessarily like a win condition by itself. I mean, it kind of is, because you can steal your opponent's win conditions, but this is not like the card that is carrying Priest right now in this particular expansion, which is why I use Zarimi Priest, because it got nerfed a lot in the expansion. But we keep seeing these cards that, like, how do you play around a card like this? Like, how do you play around a card like Reno? There's really not a way of being able to interact with these cards, because your opponent will just wait for the premier opportunity to utilize a card like this. And kind of like what we're talking about earlier with like Shadow Step, you really can't play around a card like Shadow Step, because there are several ways of being able to utilize a card like this. And you want to know something about Rogue? It has the most amount of things on my document. We have Shadow Step with Sonya, Velorock, and Scoundrel for Manage Heat combos. We have Poisons for burst and combos. We have Cycle and, like, you know, Draw. It's very apparent with this deck, and is even more, you know, is made more of a problem with cards like Gaslight and the 8/8s and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of problematic things that are happening in Hearthstone right now, and in Rogue in particular, it is the perfect storm, because Scorpion with Casino working with Mana Cheat, also having the, like, a lot of these work together in the exact same deck. Like, this could literally just be Excavate Rogue, and if you wanted to put in a Gaslight and Giants package, this could literally be every single thing that I'm talking about that is somewhat problematic. But Rogue players are really happy right now, because the amount of options that are given to you because of a card like Scoundrel, it's a really weird position to be in my opinion, to where this is such a fun card. But this is just a problematic card, because it's 1 mana cheat 3, and then you can Shadow Step it to where you have 1 mana cheat 6. Oh my god, that is way too much at times. That is just way too many things happening. And to keep the idea going, we have the complete opposite problem in Shaman, to where the only good cards in Shaman are Nature Shaman. Like, but yeah, Flash of Lightning. Shaman only has like 2 archetypes right now, which is Nature Shaman or Reno Shaman. Like, you have that, and then maybe like a few scam decks and stuff like that. So it's just like, Shaman's in a very weird position, because I love Nature Shaman, and it is a very good deck, and it made sense why this deck got nerfed. And if it hasn't been obvious, almost every single card and almost every single win condition we've been talking about has been nerfed to some extent or another. Almost all of these win conditions were considered way too fast or way too toxic, because we just have way too many effective scams and effective win conditions, but again, not enough options on trying to stop them. And when we look at Warlock, for example, we have so many different things. Like, it's just kind of hard to even begin in Warlock in particular, because of Pain Warlock and how long it was ruling the meta. But when Pain Warlock wasn't an issue, it was all about fatigue cards, and it was all about Popgar Crescendos. But there were just so many different things that are happening, and just so many different problems that were arising, to where if you got rid of one, another one would just take its place. To where some people really wanted Insanity Warlock to get nerfed. Like, oh my god, I cannot tell you how many YouTube comments I got where it's like, this deck is like the hand buff Paladin for Warlock, and I can't believe Blizzard will never nerf this deck. I think Insanity Warlock is cool. I think it's fun, but it is, you know, a deck that has been plaguing the meta for almost like 6 months now. Think about your favorite deck, and think about how long it has been in the meta right now. There have not really been a lot of new archetypes that really evolved from the Whizbangs workshop, and those that did evolve from it just feel like another scam deck. And again, this is all because we just simply do not have enough tools in order to give us new ways of being able to play these decks, try these archetypes, try to counter them, because these options just don't work. Where, like, the most important, like, change that they've really made to the meta was Ganon Baku to a degree, because even Warlock is a thing. That's really the only good deck that popped up from this change, and it does kind of, you know, have some game against Druid, so that's really the only reason why I'm bringing it up to even begin with. But then, you know, everything else that's available in Warlock right now, you have Wheel and Snake, and we don't need to talk about Snake, but we could definitely talk about Wheel, because this deck also got nerfed. Like, we nerfed every single archetype, we nerfed every single class, we nerfed every single archetype, it feels like. Like, we nerfed aggro, we nerfed control, we nerfed combo, we nerfed scam, we just... It really feels like this entire expansion was a mess, because we kept changing everything because we wanted a different outcome, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that unfortunately, no matter how many changes were made, nothing was going to make this expansion feel good. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. because these archetypes are so powerful, you can't even begin to address them. You can't counter them because the only way of nerfing these cards is to straight up kill them. So now the question is, what do we do? What do I want? We'll get to that here in a second. Don't you worry, Goomba. We got a couple more cards to talk about before we get into my notes. But yeah, with Warrior, because we haven't talked about Warrior yet, Warrior has been kind of plagued with the same problem where Odin has been so good for so long, but at the same time, this is such a fun card to mess with where seeing a good control warrior play Odin warrior is actually kind of a treat. Like, do not sit here and tell me that watching Molstar play warrior is boring, because if you are a control warrior enthusiast, if you are someone that loves the idea of this archetype, watching him play warrior is fucking art. It is art. But unfortunately, not everyone is gonna have the mentality of sitting down and mastering this deck and literally, you know, perfecting every single turn. Not everyone is a top 50, you know, legend ranked player like Molstar, and this is just an archetype that has been overshadowing Warrior for so long, where cards like Mechs, for example, Mechs are just an absolute joke. How can you make a, like, they keep supporting this archetype, by the way. Part Scrapper, Recom and Decum, Boom's Wrench, these are all new cards that they added into the format, but it's just so bad. How can you make these cards work when the obvious no dupe cards are just superior? What is the point of playing these mech cards and printing these archetypes when you have such a power differential between things like this and things like the mechs? So it's just really hard to strike this balance when we have this many cards in the format right now, because Blizzard really did try. There are so many archetypes that are possible, but they're just not playable. That is the main issue. And to kind of wrap this up, in neutral cards, the only cards that really made the list was Reno, because there's really not a lot of oh yeah, that's right, I got rid of him. I did delete him from my collection, and I'm still not recrafting him because I don't want him in my collection. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the win conditions that we've all gone through now were the only cards that really mattered. And the reason why I went through all of these cards is because I really wanted to paint a picture about the Hearthstone musical, you know, musical chairs, whack-a-mole that we've been experiencing right now. So case in point, the very first nerf that we had was to the weapon, right? And the reason why it doesn't feel like Handbuff Paladin got any weaker is because we made Paladin get weaker, and then we made other things get weaker, and then even more nerfs happened to where other things kept getting weaker, and then Paladin was just staying strong, because this is a strong archetype, a strong amount of mechanics that are all working together, and they just gave him a little slap on the wrist. This should have been either remove lifesteal or make it a 2/2 weapon. They've never changed this card. They changed everything else surrounding it, like the lifesteal and stuff like that, and they just should have nerfed this card from the very beginning. Why did they not nerf this card? Now this is I'm gonna go full screen, and I'm going into this so that way chat can be seen right now. The main takeaway from this video, the main point why I explain all these win conditions, is because we need to stop nerfing things so quickly. That is the whole point of this video. This is a direct at to Blizzard right now, to where we need to change less, but we need to change more effectively. Meaning that if we have a balance patch, we need to be fucking scared. We need to be scared that this archetype is gonna die. Remember Garrison Commander, where that came out of nowhere and they just completely butchered that card? I'm not saying to go that hard, but we need to start fearing nerfs again, because every single time that nerfs happen, people are like, oh man, Hearthstone's not gonna change. What are they gonna do? Change 1 HP? It's not gonna be good enough. No, Blizzard, you need to make us scared of nerfs again in Hearthstone, because this is unacceptable. We like the ticking down is not working, and we need to make really big, you know, nerfs happen if your goal really is to change up the meta and to change up these archetypes. You need to put the fear of God in Hearthstone players' souls when you even bring up the concept of nerfs, because they need to make that much of a change. Think about the last year and how people keep laughing about the nerfs changes that are happening. That needs to change. And the only way that it's going to change is if we allow the meta to develop. We let the meta settle for like a week, like 2-3 weeks actually. Let the meta settle for like 2-3 weeks, identify the problematic card, and then maybe on like week 3, week 4, you actually make changes that will impact the game one way or another. We don't necessarily need to be afraid of the changes, but we need to be afraid that something is going to die. That is the point that I am trying to make, because I am really sick of nerfs not impacting decks hard enough to where, oh, we're just going to deal with hand buff Paladin after it just got freshly nerfed. I just don't like that idea anymore. And I'm really hoping that we can learn from the failures of Whizbangs Workshop, because the power differences really made me not want to play the game for a while. Oh yeah, yo, I did. I went for a rant there. Unnerf Jaina. Hey man, Jaina never deserved to be nerfed. I believe fear would be the last thing people would feel with that kind of nerf. Well, again, the whole point of me saying fear is that nerfs are so unimpactful sometimes to where people just immediately laugh at them before the nerfs even go live. Like, if you got a balance patch and you got like a garrison commander and you're like, oh god, like I'm gonna start playing this deck before they nerf it, like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But to wrap up this idea and to wrap up this video, because I know that I've been ranting a lot in this particular topic, but the point that I'm trying to make is that we need to make more impactful nerfs that is actually going to change Hearthstone in the way that we want it to, instead of dealing with the same problems over and over and over again. Because, like, case in point, the one thing I am very scared of in the future is, what if there are some unforeseen consequences because of all the cards that we've nerfed in the different, like, in different stages of Hearthstone? Like, what if there's like a dragon card that would have been perfect in Zarimi Priest that is now absolutely unplayable? And I'm just running out of examples, so I'm just giving the first idea off the top of my head. What if there was a card that would have been perfect in like Shaman, but because Nature Shaman got nerfed, it's no longer playable? Same thing with like Zarimi Priest. Like, there is all of these potential consequences that could happen because we didn't get it right the first time. And Blizzard does keep in mind of like trying to set up these dominoes and set up these cards that complement each other as certain sets come out. But if we keep nerfing and we keep like adjusting things and we don't hit that sweet spot, then that's just going to make even more problems happen throughout Hearthstone's progression, and we have to keep fixing the past problems instead of focusing on how we can make Hearthstone perfect in the future. So I would love to know your guys' take on this, because I just think we had way too many balance patches this expansion. We had way too many changes that were not that big, that impactful enough to where the balance-wise, we were just playing Hearthstone musical chairs. We were just playing whack-a-mole. We didn't have big enough nerfs, make enough big impacts that would make people think that, hey, I want to play the game now because it actually genuinely feels different, and Paladin is finally knocked down a peg. I would also love to see Paladin not be the #1 deck on HSReplay one time. Just one time can it happen, dude. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think about Hearthstone win conditions in the comments below. But that is going to do it for me. Thank you to everybody on Twitch for being here during this video, and there will probably be more of these in the future. So if you want more content like this, give me some ideas on topics to talk about. But I will see y'all later, and thank you so much for making it to the end. If you decided to listen to all of these rants, thank you very much. And also, King Plush says thank you. All right, we did it. That's a YouTube video. Hey, that's a spicy video.